Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cerini Nonprofit Leadership Series, where we explore the ideas, strategies, and leadership approaches shaping today's nonprofit sector. I'm your host, Ken Cerini, and today we're talking about something that has become increasingly important for nonprofit organizations of every size: financial resilience. For many nonprofits, conversations around financial strength tend to start with fundraising, but true financial resilience goes much deeper. It's about how organizations plan for uncertainty, diversify their resources, make strategic investments, engage their boards and staff, and position themselves to continue delivering on their mission, even as costs rise, funding sources shift, and community needs evolve. I'm excited to be joined today by Tom Gabriel, President and CEO of United Way of Westchester and Putnam. Tom has extensive experience leading an organization that works across a wide range of community needs, giving him a valuable perspective on what it takes to balance immediate impact with long-term organizational sustainability. So first of all, Tom, thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I've heard you speak, and I'm really excited about today.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's my honor to be here, and I'm the one who's privileged to be asked. So, really looking forward to speaking with your audience.
Thanks a lot. So to get started, as president and CEO, you've led United Way of Westchester and Putnam through evolving community needs and funding environments. How has your perspective on financial resilience changed over the course of your leadership journey?
So, thank you for asking that question. I really don't think it has changed because I've always believed that the key to financial resilience is in diversity. Much like in private investments, it's essential for any business, especially a nonprofit, to diversify their funding streams, whether that's individuals, corporations, foundations, local government, state government, etc. But it's also important to diversify the mechanisms by which you seek or solicit those funds: grants, fee for service contracts, events, major gifts, direct mail, e-solicitations, etc. But it's not just about financial revenue generation, it's about cost containment. So we're talking about diversity in all of its many forms, and that can be daunting for a small nonprofit, even a medium-sized nonprofit, to look at increasing your revenue, but at the same time decreasing your costs. But it absolutely can be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we talk about with organizations all the time. How do you diversify revenue streams? How do you bring on more discretionary funds into your organization? And what do you do well so that you can kind of monetize the things that you do effectively? So again, I agree wholeheartedly with that whole concept of diversification. When nonprofits leaders hear the phrase financial resilience, many immediately think of fundraising, right? That's where everybody turns to, oh, we need more money, let's go fundraise. How do you define financial resilience, and what are the most important elements that extend beyond simply raising more dollars from people?
So, I'll start with a quick story. When I first got to the United Way 7 years or so ago, we were about 2 months away from not making payroll. Um,
Wow.
our expenses were exorbitant, and we had very little diversity in our revenue generation model. So we literally set to work and immediately bid out every single vendor contract we had over the course of the next 18 months, while simultaneously stepping up and diversifying our revenue generation efforts, literally looking at every single option: grants, individual giving, etc. We were relentless. And if there's anything that typifies my work mantra, my philosophical raison d'etre, if you will, it's the movie title "Everything Everywhere All at Once." So we literally were everywhere and doing everything all at once. The results were, within the first 18 months, we shaved off about $500,000 in general operating expenses,
That's amazing.
which is, yeah, it was really cool to say that to the board of directors when we did. And most of which we squirreled away as a nest egg. And that war chest enabled us to take really big swings at government grants, because we knew we'd have to wait 6 to 9 months just to get the contracts. That's not my opinion. That's the New York State Controller's Office that said that. And then it takes another probably 3 to 6 months for the reimbursement to kick in. So we knew we had to have extra cash on hand before we can start chasing after those things. And sure enough, within the first 2 years, we landed our first $1 million state grant, which has been repeated multiple times thereafter. And that's led to our massive growth.
I think what you find is that most organizations are not disciplined enough to kind of go through that thought process of going through all of their expenditures and really understanding the nature of their business and what costs are needed and what costs aren't. I assume you were a CPA in your prior life or something like that.
Close. I do have an MBA. So it was literally the first thing I did. So I also come at this from a little different angle than many of my peers in the nonprofit sector or nonprofit CEOs. Many of them come from program. I
Mhm.
came from fundraising. So my first skill set is advocacy, communication, marketing, sales, if you will. But because of my business background, my MBA, I really understood the operational lens of things. So we bid everything out from our accounting software to our auditors. You obviously know how that went, to our outsourced IT firm, our copier lease, even the garbage company that was picking up our refuse. And all of these things, we found an entity that wanted to do business with us at a lower price. So it just started magnifying and building upon itself.
So for those leaders that have more of that programmatic bend to their skill sets, what advice would you kind of give them in terms of kind of approaching this from a different perspective?
So I was trained, I've been through a leadership development program, which I hope many of my peers have as well, or if not, they're looking into. And I was trained in something called strengths-based management. And the simplest explanation to strengths-based management is if I'm a really good public speaker, communicator, and you're really good at numbers, we should work together because I don't need another person with my skill set. I need someone with the exact opposite skill set as me.
Yep.
So we bolt on and work together. So the first piece of advice is obviously go to a leadership training, learn how to diversify your thought process. But secondly, start embracing diverse opinions in all of its many forms, and especially diverse skill sets, and trust your people. So if you don't have that business background, that acumen, that accounting, that CPA background that you're talking about, okay, great. Then start partnering with those individuals, whether that's internally on your staff or externally through your board of directors, or other volunteers, or just your audit firm. Talk to them, get advice from them, and trust some of that advice. But
Yeah,
most
I think
importantly, act, do things. Yeah.
I was going to say I think the key is kind of doing that self-reflection first and understand where your strengths lie so that you can understand where the holes are in what you bring to the table so that you can incorporate other people into that inner circle to kind of help you to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So again, you guys work across a wide range of community challenges. How do you balance mission impact, right? Mission impact is important. We're seeing that there's a uptick in the need for services out there in the community. So how do you kind of balance that with the financial discipline required to ensure long-term organizational strength, right? I mean, it seems like for many organizations, the funding is going down while the need is going up. So, what do we do here? How do we balance? And a lot of times that when we're looking at government grants, which I know you brought up, you brought in a couple very large and even more than a couple very large grants. They tend not to always want to pay for all the administrative costs that are needed in terms of running an organization. So, how do you kind of pull all of those pieces together to make sure that you've got the resources that you need and that you have that ongoing flow of resources to be able to meet the needs of your community?
So another great question. Thank you, Ken. So it's a couple of things. So first off, if I can, I hate the notion of our sector being called the nonprofit sector, because we absolutely can make a profit. We just don't, it doesn't go in my pocket when we make a profit, right? We're really purpose driven. And nonprofits should be run the way a for-profit is run. You want to maximize your revenue and maximize your bottom line. Frankly, there's this mistaken notion in the nonprofit sector that the more you bleed for your mission, then it's a sign that you really care, and that's not true at all. It's a sign that you've run through bushes without putting, like a leather jacket on, right? You should be protecting yourself to do that, because at the end of the day, it's the airplane oxygen mask model, right? If you don't put that mask on yourself, how are you going to be able to help the person sitting next to you? So, I'm all for running through a thorn bush, but I want to make sure I'm protected. So when I come out the other side, I'm able to run through another thorn bush. So for us, we look at every program that we're going to launch through the prism of what's the admin, what's the bottom line, how much are we generating from this, how many people are we going to help? If we're going to take a loss, we're not going to embark on this. And if there's a certain threshold, if we're not getting 10% in admin somewhere to cover our expenses, and we can talk about admin in a second, because I got a great story about that for you if we get there. Like if we're not covering our expenses, then isn't worth it for us. Then we'll embark upon another program that will help people in our community, because we very broadly define how we assist our community, that will generate that revenue. And then the other part to that is, what can we use to then sell ourselves to other sectors, individuals, corporations, foundations, etc. So our after school program is a perfect example. The very first grant we got for that was a state grant, and it only carried about a 3% admin with it. But the second grant that we got for that had a 15% admin. And then subsequent private funding that we have gotten have covered so much more of the program that now this program on the whole is probably generating a significant revenue for the bottom line of the organization. Obviously, the government grants are, we're sticking to what the stated admins are, but it's the additional funding that we're able to bring in that's now helping us. So sometimes you embark on a project that is marketable and is going to bring us additional funding elsewhere.
Yeah, so it's kind of looking at how you're going to be able to leverage certain funding to subsidize other funding.
Yeah.
So it may not be that you need, $1 million from private sources. You only may need 20,000 to cover some of the administrative shortfall that you're getting
Exactly.
from the government funding. So it's a matter of understanding that whole concept and kind of pulling that together.
And that's where strengths-based management really comes in, because if the program person is the only one making that decision, they're not thinking of the admin. They're not thinking of the bottom line. They're not thinking about supporting the panoply of programs that our organization is running. And frankly, just our finance team would say no to everything because it's more work, right? It's more expense. So you've got to
Well,
look
come on,
at
the accountants aren't that bad.
it. So you want to have a diverse team so you get every opinion in there. We literally, as a team, were looking at a grant opportunity about a week ago. And of course, the program team was, yes, let's go for it. And then the finance team looked at it from a different angle, and our operations and administration team looked at it from another angle, and our fundraising team looked at it from a fourth angle. And then we put that all together to come up with a really cogent, salient approach for our organization in this particular funding stream. So,
Yeah, I always talk about the fact that there needs to be that strong three-legged stool. All legs have to be the same length.
yep,
Fiscal, development, operations. You need to have them all in the room. You need to have them all communicating. Operations wants to run a program. What's it going to cost? Get fiscal involved. How are we going to
yep,
fund it? Let's get development involved. And there needs to be that ongoing communication across all three areas of your business. As you said, it's not a nonprofit, it's a business,
yep,
in order to understand what the needs are so you can kind of pull all that stuff together.
yeah, 100%.
One of the things you kind of talked about is kind of going through and doing an analysis of each new program you're looking to get into to understand what the revenue streams are, what the costs are going to be, what the administrative overhead flow and everything else is. In order to do that, you need to have a certain level of confidence in your financial record keeping. And I think for many organizations, that's where some of that shortfall is the lack of adequate or appropriate financial information to be able, or timely financial information to be able to understand their business structure, understand how their business operates, and to make course corrections along the way. What's your thoughts there?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we thankfully we've got a strong in-house finance and accounting team. great external partners, both in terms of our audit firm and our board of directors.
By the way, just so I understand, who's your audit firm again? Just
Yeah,
kidding.
exactly. And our board of directors. I mean, we've got some real rock stars on our finance and audit committees that are, CFOs at big companies in this community. So we've got a lot of brain talent that's out there that really helps us through this process. But even if you don't have all of that brain talent, right? Even if you have a little bit, at the end of the day, you've got to trust them and create whatever the touch points are. Our CFO and I literally we're both early birds. We both get in before 7 o'clock. And like the first thing we talk about, besides how the Yankees did the night before, is like, where are we? What's our cash flow? What's our liquidity? What's our receivables? All of those things. And we're going through that probably 2 to 3 times a week. Now they're 5, 10 minute conversations, but they're always a check-in. And so we're on top of everything. I keep a back of the napkin, I call it, like running total of our cash, just based upon what I see coming in across the board. And then I sit down with him and I'm like, well, I see X. And he's like, yeah, it's Y. And I'm off by $2,000. And it's like, great. So we're on the same page, right? You've got the accurate numbers. I'm just keeping this running tally. So there's multiple eyes on something as well. That takes discipline and it takes a willingness by a nonprofit leader to move out of their comfort zone. If their comfort zone is program, I get it, right? You're doing this work because you want to help people in the community. Right, but you can't help people in this community if your organization is not generating revenue and you're managing it efficiently. And frankly, the role of a CEO and executive director is almost entirely external and business driven internal as opposed to programmatic. That's what program staff are for. So you have to be comfortable with making that transition. And if you're not, you better get up to speed quickly if you're a new leader, going to leadership programs, going to workshops, watching podcasts and listening to them like this, and learning the latest trends that are out there.
Yeah, I think before we jump into the next question, I think one of the key things to consider with respect to all of this stuff is that, when you're setting up your financial information flow, that financial information flow should be set up to ensure that it's providing the information that you're going to need to run your business. So whether you need to file a cost report, you need to do an audit, you have tax filings that need to be done, you're putting together board reporting packages, you have metrics that you're developing internally so that you can understand the flow and operations of your business. Your financial picture should be set, or financial information should be set up to kind of incorporate all of those
Yeah.
pieces. So all of that information is readily available.
Yeah, 100%. Completely agree.
So can you share maybe a specific example of a strategic decision that you made that significantly improved your organization's financial resilience, and like what lessons from that experience could other nonprofit leaders apply within their organizations?
Yeah, I'll share two quick ones. So firstly, as early on in my tenure, I think it was year two. Well, first of all, we've had 6 surpluses in 7 years that I've been
Oh,
here.
nice.
Yeah, and the one that was not a surplus that we had a loss, it was like a $10,000 loss on a $12 million budget. So I'll take it. But early on in my tenure, we had a really big surplus, and the instinct and all the advice was use it to generate more impact in the community. Like, let's help more people. But we didn't do that. What we did was we took a very disciplined approach and apportioned the surplus a number of different ways. We used some for impact because, yes, that is why we exist, to help people in the community. But we also paid down debt, which was going to help us in the long term. We put aside some money in a cash reserve for the future for a rainy day. Thankfully, that has not come in the 7 years. Some for infrastructure improvements like new computers, and some to fund staff raises, which were much needed and was a real boost and a shot in the arm in terms of morale. So it was a balanced approach. It was diversification. The same way I would advocate diversifying your revenue and bidding out your costs to diversify that. It was diversifying our surplus and the way we were going to invest it. All of that led us to really big things. And then the second example is the one I used before when I talked about, taking that big swing on government grants. We built up a big nest egg over the course of those first 2 years, with that about $500,000 in operational savings that we literally put aside, and that enabled us to go out and get that first big 1.2 was a 1.2 million a year over 5 years grant, because we knew it was going to take a good 9 months before we were ever going to see reimbursement. So we had the cash to cover that. And then when the payments started coming in and we built those up, it enabled us to go after the next grant and the next grant and the next grant. So
So to kind of summarize that, having those fiscal reserves to serve two purposes. First of all, they build fiscal strength within your organization, which allows you to weather the storm if a storm
yeah,
comes. And secondly, it allows you to take advantage of opportunities as opportunities come along.
100%. And that's being nimble, being flexible is about that. It's about when these opportunities come along, you've got to jump on them. So you put aside these reserves, so that when the opportunity comes along, you're going to go all in, to use a poker analogy, and you're more likely than not going to win. And now you're set up to do it a second time and a third time. That's
Right.
how you build. That's how you grow. And it takes discipline. At the end of the day, right? You've got to say, is it more important to have another Starbucks latte today versus at the end of the week having enough money for dinner? And it's the same principle with a nonprofit budget, right? Yes, I can throw another $50,000 at this particular program, or I could keep it at the level it's at and put that 50,000 towards another initiative that's going to generate more in revenue.
Right. So we talked about kind of what you've done and how you've brought some change to the organization. Let's talk a little bit about your board.
Mhm.
Okay, so what role does your board play in building financial resilience? And how can you engage your board members in conversations that move maybe beyond the annual fundraising goal towards looking at things that are more long-term and looking at that fiduciary responsibility, that financial stewardship that a board of directors should have?
Yeah, another great question. So, boards are not ATMs. And I think a lot of nonprofit organizations treat their boards, or nonprofit leaders treat their boards as that. And look, presumably a board member is involved because they are mission driven and they do believe in the cause and they want to support the cause. But literally all the data out there, whether it's the Council of Nonprofits or it's Board Source or any other entity, talks about a board as having 7 responsibilities, organizational planning, fulfilling legal obligations, providing financial oversight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, those first three are all about long-term financial stability and stewardship and financial resilience for an organization. So the first thing a CEO should be doing is recruiting board members. And frankly, if you as a nonprofit CEO are not allowed to recruit board members, you need to have a conversation with your board, because you are the one out in the community meeting with people. You should have that ability. I'm not saying you should solely have that ability, but you should be able to recommend people to a board of directors. So you should be recruiting board members that have experience in these areas. And then they should be providing, and you should be having conversations with them around investment strategies and what's an appropriate debt ratio and how do we reduce our financial debt and what are the bid processes we should be identifying with our vendors. And heck, do you know vendors in any of these disciplines? And if you do, let's bring them in, let's have them bid on the process. And of course, they should have that fiduciary transparency of overseeing some of those processes, so that everything is kept above board. So at the end of the day, it's not just about fundraising. It's not just about giving. Financial resilience is, again, that diversification strategy. It's keeping costs low. At the same time, you're increasing revenue. So you got to do both at the same time.
Do you feel that when you sat down to have these types of conversations with your board had the understanding to have those conversations, or was there an educational process, an information flow that had to come first in order to get your board to that understanding or lead your board to that understanding as to what their responsibilities are from a fiscal perspective?
So I think it's a little bit of both. We had a great board. We have a better board today, and I think that's part of the maturation process of everyone and everything, right? I think I'm a better leader today than I was 7 years ago, and I'm sure I was better then than I was 7 years prior to that. So it's the same with an organization. You should always be looking to learn and grow and improve. Uh, and with our board of directors, we did that. We looked at who our board members were, and then we really actively went out and recruited around diversity. And I mean that in the full definition of that term, right? We wanted a couple of accountants, we wanted a couple of attorneys, we wanted people from different communities within our community. We wanted different genders and races and identities, etc. We wanted everything, so we had different perspectives. It's the way we've structured our staff, our team, and we wanted our board to be that way. So we're certainly in a better position today than we were 7 years ago. And as part of that maturation process and that diversification process, every step there was communication. These are your expectations. This is what we're looking from you. This is what we need from you. Now, we also have a very large board. We have 33 board members.
Yeah, it's
And
big.
yeah, it's big. When I got here, it was 24. We intentionally grew it. And my argument around intentionally growing it was I want everyone to invest their time, but I want everyone to invest less time than what they're currently investing. So I want you to give meaningful time, but less, so it's more valuable for you, right? I don't want you to come into this office and help us with stuffing envelopes. I've got people for that. I've got other volunteers for that. I don't want you to play that role. I want you to play the role of thought leader. I want you to play the role of transparency monitor, of vetting things that we're doing, of really providing that fiduciary oversight. So on a regular basis, I'm communicating with board members ideas and vetting our problems. I meet with our board chair once a month, whether there's a meeting or anything going on. We have committee structures, and all of our committees are talking about what's ever in their purview every couple of months. So there's this constant dialogue and this flow of information. So long story short, to simply say, yeah, I think like over the course of 7 years, we've grown, we've matured, our board and our needs have matured, and our board have stepped up in that role as well.
So let's go back to administration. I mean, and overhead and all that, because I'm not going to let you forget the fact that you said you had an administrative story that if we got to it, we'll get to it. So I want to make sure we get to that administrative
Sure.
story. But also, I mean, one of the things that, nonprofits, have traditionally faced the pressure to keep their overhead as low as possible. What is one commonly held belief about nonprofit finances that you think leaders need to challenge or rethink? And then also let's incorporate that administrative story or.
Yeah, sure. So first, I want to embarrassingly say that everything I'm about to say is coming or is being shared through the prism of the fact that our admin is 6.5%, right? So it's going to seem somewhat disingenuous, right? But it's not because of some esoteric discipline that we really wanted to lower our admin rate to be able to communicate this. It's because we believe in fast twitch muscles, right? We're lean. So we want to be lean. So we work super hard. We've created a culture here of hustle, not burnout. So we don't waste time with a lot of stuff. Like we're in constant motion. But in terms of the things to push back, and the pushback will be the story that I shared. Like this notion of overhead. That if you look at donors and board members, for the most part, they're probably coming from the for-profit sector. So in the for-profit sector, overhead is things like staff gifts. It's team building exercises in Aruba. Gee, I wish I could do that. It's Monday morning breakfasts. It's things like that. In the nonprofit sector, overhead is light, heat, copiers, laptops, insurance, and our staff accountants to complete audits and voucher for grants, right? And we need to push back on that when talking with our donors, when they talk about what's your admin ratio, right? And so the story I share is that I once gave a presentation to a group of funders, and began the presentation by saying, everybody, get up, come on, get up, put your coats on. We're going outside into the parking lot. And there was a moment of incredulity and like, what are you, crazy? Because it was December. Nobody wanted to put their coats on and going out in the parking lot. And then I just, slyly said, we have to go outside in the parking lot because everything inside this room is overhead and you won't fund it. And there was silence in the room. And then I said, okay, now let's get down to brass tacks and let's talk about this. Why are you not funding overhead? You don't understand what it is. You've got this idea in your head, but you don't know what overhead is. So
Right.
I think it's important for nonprofit leaders to name it and shame it, because the vast majority of donors, I had a conversation with a donor a year ago where he was just, oh, overhead, overhead, overhead. And I said to him at one point, he runs his own business. He's very successful. And I said to him, can I ask you a question? Have you ever had a potential client ask you how much money you make? And he said, no. And I said, and if you did, what would you do? I tell him to get out of my face and I'd walk out. I said, okay, I am asked that question about 20 times a year from some different donor, as if somehow what I make is inappropriate to the fact of the work that I'm doing in the community, that I should be doing this for free. If we recognize in a capitalist model that talent, you need to attract talent to bring about impact, right? Somehow in the nonprofit space, donors have forgotten that. And they just expect a nonprofit staff and leaders to be doing all this for free. So I think it's important to name that and shame that and point that out, that, Ken, I'm sure you're getting paid. I would never ask you how much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the key here is organizations need proper infrastructure. In
Yeah,
order to have proper infrastructure, they also need to have proper leadership. Leadership is what drives impactful organizations. So you need all of these pieces. And if you're going to put limitations on what a nonprofit can do, then you're treating it like a nonprofit and not treating it like a business, as you said before.
exactly. Exactly. Right. It's not a nonprofit. It's a purpose-driven organization
That's
at
right.
the end of the day. Yeah.
That's right. So, Tom, I want to thank you for joining us. Our half hour is up. So, thanks for sharing all your insights today. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Cerini Nonprofit Leadership Series. We hope today's conversation gave you some ideas and practical takeaways that you can bring back to your own organizations. Be sure to join us for our next episode as we continue speaking with nonprofit leaders about the challenges, opportunities, and strategies shaping the sector. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.